Comedian Joan Rivers' life was as dramatic as a roller coaster, at turns victorious and tragic, but always fascinating. Author Leslie Bennetts has a new biography about Rivers and her career legacy called Last Girl Before Freeway: The Life, Loves, Losses, and Liberation of Joan Rivers. And Leslie Bennetts joins us now to discuss. Welcome, Leslie.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your book. You've had such a long and illustrious career as both a journalist and an author, and you've tackled a wide range of topics. What made you interested in delving into Joan Rivers?
Well, I have to say, having spent a lot of decades profiling people, particularly in the entertainment industry, but, you know, presidents, kings, queens, Nobel laureates, I have never encountered a character whose life, first of all, had as many ups and downs. As you said, it was quite the roller coaster ride. But also a character who was as complicated as she. She's so contradictory and paradoxical and heartwarming and heartbreaking and maddening. The woman is infuriating in a ton of ways and important in a lot of ways that I thought had really been given short shrift. Everybody knows she broke down barriers as a comedian, but a lot of other things about her life were, I thought, not sufficiently brought out. So that was an interesting challenge.
Absolutely. And in terms of her personal life, you take us back to the beginning. Joan Rivers, the girl, the young woman before she became a superstar. What were some of the influences of that time in her life that shaped her worldview?
Well, the rosebud of her life was that she had an older sister who was prettier, smarter, and more popular. So she spent her entire life being furious that she wasn't pretty and incredibly driven to get love by getting public adulation. So she had this ferocious ambition that never let up. And I mean, at 81, she went out on top, but she was working just as hard as any, 32-year-old in the business.
I thought it was so fascinating reading your description and explanation of women in the comedy world and how at Joan's time, you couldn't be both pretty and a female comic. And Joan didn't want to give on either of those fronts.
Well, she wasn't pretty, but she wanted to be a respectable, she was a nice little Barnard graduate in a black dress and pearls. And the model for women then, Phyllis Diller was not an unattractive woman, but she's wearing a fright wig and dressing like a complete crazy lady, Joan was, wanted to be more herself. She said, she wanted to land a nice Jewish husband,
Which she did.
Which she finally did.
Yeah. So it's interesting how you also mapped, her personal life and her professional life. It seems, with the tragic suicide of her husband and then the difficulties she had with her daughter, that she was never quite able to reconcile her domestic life and her professional life in a way that seemed to give her peace. Not because that's unique for her being a woman. There are plenty of men who can't do that as well. But did you?
Well, I see it a little differently. She fulfilled the American dream for women. She had the perfect husband, finally, the little groom on the wedding cake, and he was her business manager, and they worked together on her career, and that was more than 20 years of her life, and the perfect daughter, and she was very successful. But the truth was that the husband she thought she couldn't live without actually kind of ruined her life. And when he killed himself because he had screwed up her show and suddenly she was a pariah in the entertainment industry, she found that he had squandered all of their money on bad investments, and she was $37 million in debt.
Oh my goodness.
So having thought that a woman's success depended on finding Mr. Right, she found out that was like the worst nightmare of her life. And the interesting thing about her is that she fought, starting in her mid-50s, a time when women are usually washed up in any field, she fought her way back to greater success than she ever had before. And she found the love of her life in later life. She had a long relationship with Orrin Lehman, a New York philanthropist and politician. She had lots of other love affairs, and she built a billion-dollar business that she was the CEO of, as well as the designer of jewelry and clothing that she sold on QVC.
How did she do that?
And she invented the red carpet in her 60s and 70s as a senior citizen.
It's just amazing. How did she do that?
Yeah.
What were her tools?
Well, she didn't have any except for her drive.
Amazing.
She had thought, she did the whole girl thing. Like, I don't like math. I don't like reading the contracts. My husband's good at that. He's a man. He'll take care of it. And he screwed it all up. And when she was finally forced to do it for herself, she found she was better at it than any of the men who had been handling it for her.
Good for her. Now, what about her famous feud with Johnny Carson?
Yeah.
What was behind that, and did they ever reconcile?
No, she was seen as Johnny Carson's surrogate daughter, and he was her mentor, and he made her a star in a single appearance on The Tonight Show in 1965. And she was his favorite substitute host, and one of the problems might have been that she started getting better ratings than he did, so there was some question as to whether he was jealous. But she finally left him to get a show of her own on Fox, the fledgling Fox network. And Johnny Carson felt betrayed, partly because of the way she handled it, because she didn't tell him until he found out from someone else. So he never spoke to her again, would not take her calls, banned her from not only The Tonight Show, but she was banned from NBC for decades. And it was a really terrible feud. And she felt that he was being unfair to her. But many people agreed with him and thought she had betrayed him.
How difficult. Now, what would you say was behind her obsession or almost addiction to plastic surgery?
It's that initial feeling early in life of being unattractive, and she was in a rage from a very early age about the fact that she felt beauty gave certain women this unfair advantage. And even as a child, she hated Elizabeth Taylor because Elizabeth Taylor was the same age, and Elizabeth Taylor was a child star even before adolescence, and by the time she was a teenager, she was a major movie star. And so Joan, who aspired to that kind of thing, she wanted to be a great actress, was just absolutely eaten up with envy because Elizabeth Taylor had this unbelievable face that everyone wanted to look at. And so Joan spent the rest of her life trying to fix what nature had not given her. At one point, she said in a television interview that she had had 739 plastic surgery procedures. She later said, no, I was exaggerating. So the real number might be a little less, but she had a lot of stuff done, and she was, of course, unrecognizable compared to her earlier self.
Did you ever interview her while she was alive?
I didn't interview her. I had met her. But she, talked constantly and revealed everything.
Yes, so that's right. She was not a cipher, let's say.
It was a...
So what would you say is her most lasting legacy? For you, what stands out?
Well, I think the world would say, and the obituaries said, she broke down these barriers for women in comedy. It was a total boys' club when she first tried to enter it. And now, the hottest names in comedy are women. And it's Amy Schumer who gets $10 million for her memoirs at the age of 33. And so Joan is very much the sort of godmother of all of that. But I also feel that in an era of lengthening lifespans, when reinventing yourself is a hot topic, she has not gotten nearly enough recognition or credit for what an inspiring role model she is for people in the second half of life, because my book opens with her sitting on her bed at the age of 54 with a gun in her lap, thinking, I've lost everything. I've lost my husband, I've lost my career, I've lost my fortune, I've lost my daughter. There is nothing left. It's a clean sweep. I don't have anything to live for. I might as well kill myself. And instead of doing that, she reinvented herself and became more successful and richer and more famous and more beloved, and carved out these successes in all these other fields that she hadn't been in before. And I think it's an extraordinarily inspiring story for people facing challenges in any area of life.
Absolutely.
It's not just about comedy.
The art of reinvention.
The art of reinventing yourself, and her motto was one that all of us could get something from. It was, her motto in life was, never give up, never quit. And of course, the way she rendered it was never, 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 with about 18 exclamation points.
We can all learn something from that.
Yes, that's what she lived by, and that's what I will take away from this project for myself.
For your next book, right?
Right.
Leslie Bennetts, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.